You're listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. In the blue corner, we've got Mr. Karle supporting Tottenham. In the red corner, we've got Mr. Kenner supporting Arsenal. Together, they will be discussing all of your football views, all of your football news. So join us here on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm Chris Karle and I'm joined this afternoon by Geoff Saunders, our regular West Ham pundit. How are you doing, Geoff?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thank you.
Now, there's been a lot going on since our last episode, of course. During the last one, which was episode 11, we were talking about Harry Maguire joining Manchester United. Well, it's finally happened a couple of days after we broadcast. 80 million, Geoff.
Yeah, well, it will all depend on whether it works. If it works out, then 80 million's cheap, and if it doesn't work out, 40 million would have been too much. So
yeah, so you know, who knows? But he's just, he's a defender. I was saying to you before we started, defenders seem to be the new rock and roll and new expensive players. It's happened quite a lot last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of money for any defender. He's an England international, but what does he bring to United that they didn't have?
Well, you have to go to the beginning. They conceded 54 goals last season. They were shocking in defence. What do we know about Maguire? He's brilliant in the air. No defender won as many aerial duels as he did last season. However, Manchester United were second in the table for winning aerial duels, so that wasn't a weakness for them.
Right, so he didn't add anything then?
It doesn't add anything in that respect. Where he does add something is that he's very good at bringing the ball out from defence at his feet and finding a pass, and he completed a very, very high proportion of passes. And to compare that to the ones that were there, Lindelof gave the ball away twice as often as he completed passes.
That's shocking. That is absolutely outrageous.
So now, if that is the reason for it, and I'm pretty sure it is, then you would think that Solskjaer would have wanted him as early as possible, not in the final week of the transfer season.
Sure, of course.
To work with him, and transition is the key. Transition from defence to attack and attack back to defence is the key. That's what coaches work on all the time. So Solskjaer's only got him for 6 days.
Right, before the season starts.
Before the season starts. And Manchester United paid 80 million. In May, Ed Woodward, the commercial genius, asked Leicester about Maguire, and they quoted 80 million. Oh no, that's too much, he said. And now 3 months later, when it's nearly too late, he's paid 80 million.
So they've wasted
3 months, yeah.
And the deal hasn't changed.
Whoever
heard that before?
Yeah.
So Brexit sort of negotiations there from Woodward, and not a genius in that sense, as you say. Nothing has changed since May.
No.
So they've wasted all that time. He could have been training with them or going on tour with them. Yeah. They've had another one of those, as all the teams do, one of those extensive tours abroad. Some of them against strong opposition, where they could have tested him, fitted him in with a team. I mean, he could have met his teammates before they kick off on Sunday.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Mind you, that didn't seem to affect Manchester United much last season, did it?
No, not at all.
They'd been together for 3 or 4 years, and 10, some of them, and they still couldn't find each other on the pitch.
True enough. Talking of, negotiations, Daniel Levy, the Tottenham chairman, notorious for either not buying anybody or leaving it to the last day of the season. As we're recording this, deadline day finishes at 5 o'clock this afternoon. You'll be listening to this from Sunday, so some of the deals may have gone through, but he's leaving it very late, as usual, which means that even if we sign somebody today, on deadline day, it'll be 48 hours before we actually play our first game. And so whoever's coming across from Italy or wherever it is has somehow got to fit into a team within 48 hours.
I mean, it's not ideal, is it? But given that you have a deadline, selling clubs and buying clubs are going to work their way up to it according to how it suits them financially. We are where we are, and that's the rule. But to get a player, if Tottenham could get Dybala, for example, if he signs in the last second, it's still a brilliant deal.
I'd love to have Dybala at Tottenham, of course.
God,
but that faltered, didn't it, yesterday? They were just on the brink of signing him. They'd agreed terms, at least with the club, but the club's not the important thing anymore. No,
apparently the sticking point is his image rights, which are owned by somebody else entirely.
Image Star, I think the company's called.
Yeah, I mean, it's just nonsense, isn't it? We're talking about a footballer.
Yeah, so you can have him, you can sign him for 60, I think, was it 70 million they were going to pay for him?
Something like that, yeah.
The club that own him can't sell him because another company who own what he looks like, his image rights, and are not happy with the signing, because they want more money out of shirt sales and his face on the programme or his face in a Dairy Lee advert, whatever it is that he gets involved with, but nothing to do with him on the pitch.
No, nothing at all. And apparently he wants to make the move. And Juventus want him to go and Tottenham want to buy him.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's crazy.
Tottenham could miss out on a very exciting player. It looks like signed Lo Celso and Sessegnon, the 19-year-old from Fulham, Ryan. He's coming across from Fulham, who've gone down, of course. Good buy for Tottenham, I think, though.
I think very good buy. But he's a good player, no question at all. Do you know why he's famous and will always be famous?
Go on.
He was the first player born in the 21st century to score a goal in the Premier League.
That's right. That's right. Brilliant. Talking of trivia questions, and do you know, you've got one for us that we'll announce a little bit later on.
Right, okay. The question is, what do Matt Smith of Millwall, Reece James of Wigan, Moussa Dembele of Fulham, and Paul Williams, Coventry City, all have in common?
So all those players and former players all have something in common. We will give you the answer in about 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes. Whenever it is, you'll hear the answer on this very show. Talking of transfers, one that's popped up just this week that really interested me, Danny Welbeck, free to Watford. I mean, is that the level he's at now? And does that mean Watford are aspiring to a different or a higher level? Which is it, or is it a combination?
I'm not sure it's any of those. I think it's just he's a very good player and he has pace, and that's what Watford have been missing up front. So it's just a deal which suits everybody and means he doesn't have to reprogram the sat-nav in his car to get to work.
So good deal for everybody, really. I'm pleased for Watford, because I kind of at one point, like everybody I suppose, rated Danny Welbeck, and I sort of sad to see this sort of decline that happened. And he's been without a club. This is a free transfer he's on here. The Danny Welbeck. Whatever happened?
Well, injuries happened.
Sadly, just injuries, yeah. Let's move on and look at some of the other transfers that have been happening. Because, there's a couple of players that are making what I would say were unexpected moves this week. First of all, David Luiz, Chelsea legend. I would say, won a lot with Chelsea. Great player. Apparently, he's making a move to Arsenal. Now, the interesting thing, or the funny thing for me, Geoff, is that he actually wants to move to Arsenal, which I didn't think was a thing.
Well, no, and I'd written a note to use in today's podcast, and what I wrote was Arsenal may have spent a lot of money, but they still have no defence that anyone can see. And after the David Luiz transfer, it's still true. Nice. He's 32 years old. He's gone for 8 million, which is... Arsenal were never going to get any transfer back because he's 32 years old. He's very good at playing the ball out from the back, but the question mark against him has always been his defence as a central defender. Chelsea appear to be quite happy with Christensen and Zuma in central defence. Zuma is very much the stopper central defender, and that's what Lampard has been working with. So it might be a deal that suits everyone else, and all David Luiz has to do is find his way to Arsenal's training ground. Yes, the other around the M25 from Chobham.
Yeah.
Perhaps he could get Danny Welbeck to give him a lift. Or something.
Yeah. It's quite the opposite of south of the river. You must be joking. He's actually got to go north.
Well, I think they all live north of the river.
They do, yes. Of course they do. Absolutely, of course they do. They have to just travel south on occasion to work. How awful for them.
There is another issue around the transfer of why David Luiz to Arsenal, and that's because Arsenal's manager is Unai Emery.
Yes.
And he was the manager of David Luiz at Paris Saint-Germain. They know each other very well.
Right, well, that is an interesting point. They do know each other. I mean, for David Luiz, and it's a way out of Chelsea without losing grace or face, I suppose. Very rarely do rivals sell to each other.
Indeed.
There are cases where they've actually sold players abroad for 10 million less rather than selling to their rivals. Obviously, Chelsea do not feel that would be a threat to have David Luiz facing them when they face Arsenal.
Indeed.
Perhaps they're just not worried about facing Arsenal. At all.
No, and certainly not worried about attacking David Luiz.
Yeah, so they 8 million though, possibly, not a great deal of money for Chelsea to recoup, but a good deal for Arsenal. They might get a year or two out of him.
Yeah, I think Chelsea have just got the money back that they gave to David Luiz for his contract extension, basically.
There you go. So they've got out of that one nicely. Another player is on the move, Andy Carroll, of course, who plays for West Ham, your team.
Did he play for West Ham?
No, he was signed. Sorry, he was on the books of. I rephrased that. I misspoke.
Yeah, well, actually, he's. I think West Ham are the team that Carroll has been with longest in his career.
What, really?
Yeah. Straight.
Nobody noticed.
And nobody noticed.
the Guinness World Record that nobody noticed.
No. Well, if you remember a few weeks ago, I said, somebody should buy Andy Carroll on a pay-per-play basis, and I'm guessing that's what Newcastle are doing. He's having tests there at the moment, like fitness tests,
right.
Extended fitness tests. So, yeah, I mean, it could work out very well for them.
So Andy Carroll to Newcastle. We shall see what happens with that one, but a couple of interesting transfers there. There have been some changes. We'll move on a little bit. There have been some changes in the laws for the Premier League. Now, the Premier League is kicking off this weekend. We're going to have a look at some of the games after we've gone through the new laws. There's a few that don't mean anything, that don't change the game a lot. Drop ball, for example. Drop balls, they used to both have a go at kicking them, can no longer be contested. What's going to happen, Geoff, is that basically if players stop, the ball is dropped to the player on the team that last touched the ball and where they touched it. So if you're halfway into your opponent's half and it's a drop ball situation, you get the ball back and you start from where you finished.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense in one respect, that normally the team that kicks the ball out when there is an injury get penalised because the other team win the drop ball, exactly, who then kick it 30 or 50 yards down the pitch.
Yeah, so you start all over again.
So here at least you will start at the position you were when the ball was kicked out. Okay, fair enough. The defending side still get to bring all their players back behind the ball, mind you. Yeah. So it is what it is. I think it's sensible. I mean,
it is. It's like pressing pause rather than rewind, I suppose. But as you said, the defenders get to regroup, but the attacking team get the ball back. But at least it's a positive and rule, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
However, we're going to go on to the other rules now, which do not follow that trend. Handball, still, of course, it remains that deliberate handball is an offence, obviously, but accidental handball will be a free kick or a penalty if, and I'm reading this, so it won't make a lot of sense, the ball goes into the goal off an attacker, a player gets the ball using his or her arm or hand and then scores. Well, that's obvious, even if it's not deliberate, it says. The player's arm or hand is above their shoulder unless the player controlled the ball onto his own arm or shoulder, hand. And this is the one, and I'm going to actually make air quotes that nobody can see, but a player's hand or arm has made their body unnaturally bigger, whatever that means and however you judge that.
That's right, it's a load of nonsense, isn't it?
I mean, this is all... You said to me, and you've said this many times, that it's not a change in the law, it's a change in how it's interpreted by the referees.
Yes.
Which means that basically it's just up to human judgment again.
But I wish they would leave it up to the referees. The law is very, very clear. And the law states, if it is ball to hand, it is not handball. It is only handball if the player intentionally moves his hand to the ball. That is the law. Why don't we just leave it at that and let the referees decide?
Yeah, whether it is deliberate or not. Simple. Yeah. Is it deliberate? Yes. Free kick, goal kick, penalty, whatever. Was it deliberate? No. He had his hand behind his back like...
Well, I mean, that Paris Saint-Germain penalty for Manchester United. A player jumps with his back to the ball and the ball hits his hand. How can anybody possibly say that he deliberately handballed it?
Yeah, I mean,
he did not.
People do not have eyes in the back of the head, least of all footballers. I mean, Tottenham have had defenders that don't have them in the front of their head, so
exactly.
How was he supposed to know?
So the problem is referees are interpreting the guidelines they're given, not the law.
Yeah, I mean, it's so... This unnaturally bigger is open for a lot of debate. During the summer, we were blessed with some great football from the Women's World Cup. The Netherlands were given a penalty against Japan for a handball based on that interpretation of the law. But however, Premier League referees chief Mike Riley watched it, and he said, in the Premier League, we would consider that to be a natural position of the hand, and therefore it wouldn't have been a penalty. So again, he's interpreting the same law differently than the referee did at that match.
Yes.
So same law, different...
Yeah, he's actually interpreting a guideline, not the law.
We're, confused you will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue on from previously. Another change is regarding goal kicks. They can now be played to a teammate inside the penalty area. The law now says the ball is considered in play as soon as the kick is taken.
Yeah, that's a sensible change. If you don't realise what happens, the reason for this is the goalkeepers sometimes take short kicks from a goal kick to a defender on the edge of the area. If that defender is then closed down by an attacking player, rather than let the ball come out of the penalty area and then be live, they'll step into the penalty area and play it back, and the referee blows his whistle and you take the goal kick all over again. Right. This is to stop defenders manipulating that law.
All right, so we're happy with that one.
Yeah.
We're happy with that one and the drop ball one. We're just confused by the handballs. Penalties. The law's changed concerning what goalkeepers can do regarding penalties. Penalty kick can't be taken if the goalkeeper is touching the woodwork or the nets, or if the nets or posts are still moving after being touched. You know, like they like to go round and touch the post. If it's still shaking afterwards, they can't say that. What if there's a wind? What if there's a gale blowing?
I don't think I've ever seen that happen.
I don't think I've seen the nets blowing around that they've gone, oh, you can't take this penalty now. Look at that. Look at, I mean, ridiculous. The goalkeeper also has to have one of his or her feet partly on the goal line, and then they put in brackets, or above it if he's jumping. If he jumps in the air, one of his feet has got to be hovering above the goal line when the kick is taken, or he or she cannot stand behind or in front of the line. So you've got to be on your line. I thought that was the case anyway.
I thought so too, yeah.
Well, they're underlining it now by changing it and saying the same thing. Don't get it. I don't see any change there, but apparently that is a change. Substitutions. If you're going to be substituted, you've got to leave the pitch by the nearest point on the touchline or byline, unless the referee says they can leave quickly at the halfway line or elsewhere for safety or injury reasons. I mean, the change is to stop people time wasting, and any player who infringes on what they call the spirit of this law will be booked for unsporting behaviour, and very good, say I. We've seen a lot of
it should go off at the nearest point.
Slowly walking off, clapping, looking around the stadium. So they go off at the nearest point. I think that gets rid of that. So we don't disagree with that at all.
Nope.
In other news regarding law changes, you can be booked for celebrating by removing your shirt or celebrating with the fans, even if the goal is disallowed. Now, I didn't know that. Apparently, they've only been given a yellow card if the goal has counted. That's a weird one.
Well, I don't understand the law as it was before, because if the removing your shirt is the offence, you have removed your shirt, so you've committed the offence.
It doesn't matter when you do it.
Yeah, I don't understand.
You removed your shirt, but I've disallowed your goal, so I'll let you off. Doesn't make weird. But we are dealing with football authorities here, so.
Well, yes, indeed.
Finally, the team that wins the pre-match coin toss can now choose whether to take the kick-off or which goal to attack. Previously, they could only choose which goal to attack. So, does it add much to the game, really? Does it make any difference?
I think it makes very little difference. When you're playing on pitches as good as Premier League or professional football pitches are, which tend to be flat, there's no slope, there's not much wind affecting it. It's all a bit irrelevant. Teams like to attack a certain goal at a certain first or second half, don't they? Like Arsenal.
Yes,
Arsenal always wanted to attack the clock in the second half. People will still choose ends rather than kick off.
Among those changes, we're okay with a couple of them. A couple of them don't make any sense and don't seem to be any different. The handball thing is no clearer than it was before.
No.
And why they can't just say deliberate or not deliberate, and that it's one or the other, and that's an end of it.
That was the clearest. That was the clearest it's ever been. All these guidelines to help make it clearer just make it worse.
Yeah, muddying the waters, as they say. Let's go back to your trivia question. Repeat the question and give us the answer.
Right. What do Matt Smith of Millwall, Reece James of Wigan, Moussa Dembele at Fulham, and Paul Williams of Coventry City all have in common?
All right. Go on.
Right. This came up because last week Queen's Park Rangers sold Matt Smith to Millwall and replaced him with a player also called Matt Smith on loan from Manchester City on the same day. Last summer, Wigan sold Reece James, formerly of Manchester United, and he was replaced by a player on loan from Chelsea called Reece James. In July 2012, at Fulham, Moussa Dembele replaced Moussa Dembele when he was sold to Tottenham.
Yes.
And in 1992, Coventry City had Paul Williams and Paul Williams. So they had two players called Paul Williams. A year later, Paul Williams was sold and was replaced by a third Paul Williams.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So basically they were all replaced by their namesakes or replacing namesakes. That's weird. That's a beautiful question. I do feel, though, that they were just saving money on shirts or something like that. Let's have a little look at what's happening this weekend in the Premier League, at least. Bear in mind, everybody who's listening, of course, we're recording this on deadline day, which is Thursday. The first Premier League game to take place for the 2019-2020 season is tomorrow. So we're just predicting all these games. They're just our humble opinions of what might happen in the opening weekend of the season. First of all, Geoff, Liverpool take on newly promoted Norwich City. As we said on the previous podcast, Klopp complaining about having to play so soon after so many games, but at least he's being eased into the season quite nicely against lowly, shall we say, Norwich City, a contender to go down.
Yeah, I think it should be a comfortable win for Liverpool.
I'm going to say because it is the start of the season, it's going to be quite cautious. I'm going to say 2-0 to Liverpool. We're both saying 2-0 to Liverpool.
2-0 to Liverpool.
All right, let's see how we get on with the next one. Your team, West Ham United, are the early game on Saturday, 12:30 UK time kickoff against the champions Manchester City. So, unlike Liverpool, West Ham have got a first game of the season. At least West Ham are at home.
Being at home hasn't done us a great deal of good in the last couple of years, but 2-1 to City, I think.
2-1?
Yeah.
All right, I think I'm going to go with 3-1. Bournemouth are at home to newly promoted Sheffield United, who've been spending a bit of money. So I think that's going to be a close one. Got draw written all over it.
Yeah, I'll go for a Bournemouth win.
So you're going to go for Bournemouth. I'm going to go for a score draw. Burnley against Southampton. Burnley, last couple of seasons, done very well. They did falter a bit because of the Europa League, which we may get time to talk about Wolves and the Europa League in a moment. Burnley against Southampton. Again, it looks like a draw, but I'm going to go 2-1 to Burnley.
I'll go for a Southampton win.
Great stuff. So we're disagreeing. Crystal Palace. Zaha, as we speak, is looking to leave Crystal Palace.
He's having a tantrum at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, so who knows what's going to happen there. That may be resolved, of course, by the time this podcast goes out. Crystal Palace are at home to Everton, who've made some interesting signings.
I'll go for an Everton win.
I think I'm going to go for 2-1 to Everton. I think Palace will be in it, but I think Everton really, really have laid out their stall this season. Yeah. I think they're really looking for something special. Watford, with Danny Welbeck. Possibly playing in that game at home to Brighton.
Watford should have enough to win that.
I think Watford will win that. That could be 2-0. And then the late game on Saturday is my Tottenham Hotspur against newly promoted Aston Villa. Now, just bear in mind, Aston Villa finished the Championship in 5th. They weren't even in the top 2 or 3 best teams in the Championship. They finished in 5th. They got through via the playoffs, obviously. And then, as we said on the last podcast, they've got rid of a load of players and brought a load in. They'll probably be all over the place, I think, and Tottenham need to start strong. We've got some new players coming in. We've got Son and Dele suspended for that game. 3-0 Tottenham. I'm really sticking my neck out on that one, but I think we'll come out flying.
I can see Tottenham winning, maybe 2-1.
Yeah, all right. So
because it's Tottenham, so you've got to question the defence, haven't you? It's in the rules. Yeah.
You're right. 0-0. Right. Let's move on to Sunday. Leicester City against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, before we go through the 3 games on Sunday, let's just briefly talk about Wolves, because they've got a great manager, very well proven manager, done very well in Europe in the past. They are in the Europa League this season. They are contenders for what you call the Vase, the Everton Trophy. The top 6 or 6, finish or whatever.
7th place finish.
7th place, yeah. Can Wolves do it? Bearing in mind they've got this long season in the Europa League, which was the undoing of Burnley last year.
Yeah, I think the problem Wolves have is that they had 10 of their players played 33 or more games. So the manager does stick with his core of players and play them a lot. But if they use the Europa League for the other players, the fringe players, they can do very well out of it. Wolves last season were brilliant against the top 6 sides. Nobody outside the top 4 did better against the top 6 sides than Wolves. Where they let themselves down was against the bottom 3. Right. If they'd got as many points against the bottom 3 as sort of average for the top half, they'd have got more points than Manchester United. Wolves like to sit back and counter-attack, and of course the teams below you don't want to attack you because they're not as good and they'll get beaten. So you have this situation of Wolves just lumping long balls to the other team and just lump it back. So no, we don't want it.
Playing badminton, basically.
Yeah. So, but Leicester, I think, will be very positive. Rodgers is a very, very good coach, and just to give some facts that back that up. He got 17 points from the 9 games that he was manager last season. So if he'd been manager for the whole season and the same thing had applied, he'd have got 72 points.
Wow.
20 more than they did get. Now, obviously, he's not going to, it doesn't translate in exactly the same way. But he's clearly a positive in terms of additional points for the team. So although Leicester have not strengthened the team and have lost Maguire, if they can get Lewis Dunk in by close of play today and he plays, the defence will be pretty good. Leicester look a good bet. I don't know. It might be a very entertaining draw, that match.
I was going to say the same thing. I think of all of the games, that's the one that you really can't call. It does. Both teams done some interesting business in the summer. Wolves, of course, came on strong last season. All of that you've said, 2-2 or something ridiculous, or 3-3 or something ridiculous. Both teams are going to be doing well this season, I think.
Yes, they are.
And that, it's interesting that those two teams that we're tipping for doing well are meeting each other so early. Newcastle United against Arsenal. Newcastle, what another season in turmoil. Are they going to be sold? Are they really for sale? Did they have any good players to start with? They've sold two of their best players. They may be signing Andy Carroll. They're playing against Arsenal, who, just repeat what I've just said about Newcastle and relate it to Arsenal, I suppose.
Yeah, with a better quality of player playing at Arsenal. I don't know. Arsenal should win. I mean, Newcastle, that squad is a bad squad. I mean, it's a relegation squad.
Yes,
so Arsenal should win.
I think Arsenal may let a goal in, but I think they'll score 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I think Arsenal will win that.
Well, if David Luiz plays for them, then of course they will concede a goal. So.
Yeah, so we'll leave that to that. Manchester United take on Chelsea. Big game for both teams. An early big game, if you like. In previous years, you would have said that. Chelsea and Man United always, looking for top 4 or top 3.
Yeah.
Chelsea now, finished third. Man United finished, too far down the table to scroll down.
Yeah.
On the phone. So really, in years gone by, that would have been a big fixture, but not so much now, I suppose.
Well, I don't know. I think the Chelsea squad is a much better squad than Manchester United's. For player, they're better. Big unknown is how good a manager is. Is Lampard? Will the players play for him? How will he set the team up? All of that could probably be a draw, I think.
Generally, they are those two. The Man United Chelsea games are very often like Manchester United Arsenal. Yeah. They can be very contentious and a lot of sort of incidents, but they are very often finish up a draw. Score draw. I think it'll be a score draw. Maybe Maguire to score an own goal. No, don't say that.
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, I don't know if it's too... I mean, he's just signed for them. Is it too early for him to come into the team?
Well, I mean, what is he? He's a centre-back. He's been a centre-back all his career. What's the point in worrying too much if he's going to fit in with the other defenders there who are frankly useless? So you may as well put him in, because he's going to be the best player on the, in their team. All
right, we shall see what's going to happen. Those are our predictions. Bear in mind they were made today on Thursday, a day before the Premier League season. Oh, there he is finally. Geoff turned up. Look at him, Steve. Seeing as you're finally here, it is time for you to contribute to the show. All right, now, fantastic. We've got continuing here with myself, Geoff, and Steve Kenton. Because Geoff's a West Ham fan, we've decided to do an all-time West Ham 16. Now, it's a difficult one because they've won nothing, have they, since 1966 when they claim to have won the World Cup, Geoff?
Well, they clearly did win the World Cup, since we had the captain and the goal scorers, all West Ham players. And that actually was an interesting 3-year spell. They won the FA Cup at Wembley in 64, Cup Winners' Cup at Wembley in 65, World Cup at Wembley in 66. And Bobby Moore lifted all those trophies.
Hold on. Wasn't your captain out of contract just prior to the World Cup?
Yeah, he was. He was negotiating with Manchester United at the
there
time.
You go then. So he was a non-contract player when he was in the England squad.
No, because the rules in transfers then were you were owned by the club. So he was negotiating, and every time Manchester United made him an offer of 120 quid, West Ham just went, okay, 125, and he just kept on going like that until everyone got bored. So the best all-time West Ham 11. I'll start with the goalkeeper is, for me, Mervyn Day.
I'll go along with that, actually. What about? Although I loved Parks.
I love Phil Parks as well, but
brilliant
he was a brilliant keeper. Yeah, absolutely right. But in my mind, he's always a QPR keeper.
Do you think?
Yeah. He's always a QPR keeper, in my mind. Day went through 2 phases. Before he got married and after he got married. And before he got married, he was sensational. After he got married, it's like his edge went. Fullbacks, I've got Ray Stewart and Frank Lampard.
Yep. Funnily enough, I had the same.
Centre-backs, well, obviously Bobby Moore, who's also the captain.
Oh, do you think? Oh, you saw he wasn't past his best.
Yeah.
He was out of contract.
And as a sort of stopper centre-half, I'd go for Alvin Martin, because he was a great ball player as well. Kevin Lott was the sort of successor to Bobby Moore as the ball player, creative centre-back.
Yeah, but not half the player.
But if you got Moore, you don't have Kevin Lott. Midfield, I'd have Bonds as my holder. Also, he's also box-to-box midfield. He was kind of everything.
He's your archetypal number 4, really, isn't he?
And he was number 4 when he came in.
There you go.
Rooking. Obviously, he's classic number 10, one of the best the world's ever seen.
Indeed.
Martin Peters and Alan Devonshire.
Do you know what? I have exactly the same the same listing as you do, pretty much at the moment in my head.
And unlucky to miss out, for me, one of my favourite players ever is Graham Padden. Fantastic left-footed, creative player.
I saw Graham Padden play. I think it was against Luton. I think West Ham won with an Alan Carr own goal, ironically enough. David Carr. David Carr own goal. And I'm sure it was Padden. It's absolutely superb. Just run the game.
Oh, absolutely.
Completely run the game.
In training, they couldn't get the ball off him. He was just that good. And up front, Geoff Hurst. I'll go beside him with Tony Cottee.
Oh, this is where we differ. I've gone Pop Robson.
It's a good shout, but I'll go for Cottee because he's West Ham Academy player.
Yeah, but I've always thought, I've got to say, Pop Robson is probably the best striker, the best West Ham striker I've ever seen.
I don't know. Alongside Cottee, I couldn't separate them. I loved Pop Robson. He was just the most goal poacher. He was just, forget about him outside the penalty area because you get nothing from him. No. But inside the penalty area, it's just astonishing.
That was certainly back in sort of like, well, I suppose we're talking the 70s really. You found that a lot with strikers, with what would now be probably classed as world-class strikers.
Yeah.
They just didn't do anything outside the box at all. Latchford did very little. McDonald did nothing.
Latchford is the type of centre-forward like Hurst. Half his game was receiving the ball with the back to the goal, bringing on other players. So he'd take all the kicks on the ankles and the back of the legs and lay the ball off. Cottee and Pop Robson were the little one along with the big one. So they were the poachers who stuck the ball inside the 6-yard box. I'll go with Cottee because he's an academy player.
Okay.
And of that 11, 9 of them are West Ham Academy. Only 2 of them were bought on the market. Billy Bonds, who came, I can't remember, it was Charlton. And Ray Stewart, who came from some Scottish team.
Stewart. I've got a feeling.
Falkirk or somewhere like that.
It's like Motherwell, I think, wasn't it?
It could be.
It
doesn't.
I'll have to check that one out. But
it's one of those teams the second name is Neil.
Something like that. But yeah, so who on the bench? Parks?
Yeah,
or
Parks.
Ferguson?
No, Parks.
Parks?
Yeah. I mean, Ferguson, for those who don't know, was actually bought by West Ham for what was then the world record fee for a goalkeeper.
Yeah, what was it? Was it 220 or something?
No, it's 75,000.
Was it 75?
Yeah. And Ferguson ended his time at West Ham playing for the reserve team in there is a league for this for reserve teams, if you didn't know.
Yep.
On the left wing, not as a goalkeeper at all.
We've got Parks on the bench. Who else on the bench from defence?
I'd have Kevin Locke on the bench.
Okay.
Tommy Taylor, Graham Padden, probably have Julian Dix on the bench. Yeah, he's very popular amongst West Ham fans.
Yeah, but popular doesn't necessarily mean any good. And Pop Robson, I suppose, has got
Pop Robson, yeah.
So,
in the midfield, on the bench, Stuart Robson.
Right, okay, so we've got 6 substitutes then.
Yeah, okay. And I've also left out one of my favourite players ever, Clyde Best. Amazing centre-forward.
Yeah, he was a brilliant player.
He was.
Took an awful lot of flack as well, didn't he? Yeah. But he was absolutely superb. Okay, starting 11, we've got Day. Defence, Ray Stewart, Frank Lampard, Alvin Martin and Bobby Moore. The midfield, we've got Martin Peters, Bonzo, Billy Bonds, Trevor Brooking, Alan Devonshire. Up front, we've got Geoff Hurst and Tony Cottee, while on the bench, we got Parks, Dix, Robson, Padden and Robson.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that is your West Ham all-time best team as conceived and seen by Steve Kenton and Geoff Saunders there. If you have an opinion otherwise, let us know in the comments section. Talking of all-time best and all that and retro, one thing that sort of annoys me as you get older is this whole idea that people say about it was much better in our day. We used to go out and play with sticks and stones in the street. Kids of today don't understand. Frankly, I would much rather have grown up in today's day and age, if you like, with iPhones and tablets and Netflix and video games, quite frankly. But Steve, you're a bit of an aficionado of old football games like, well, to start it off, Subbuteo.
Yeah. Do you not appreciate the beauty of blow football ever?
Not really.
Did you never appreciate? Oh, really?
Once you've sort of blown into a straw 4 or 5 times, it kind of loses. It kind of loses the magic.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're a Philistine. I mean, didn't you ever put 3 penny coins together in a triangle and shove them through each other in a triangular motion to try and score at the other end?
There's a whole video site dedicated to that, I'm sure.
You know, I've dug out my Subbuteo.
Yes.
Right, and along with my...
Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a condition. It's not a medical condition that he's dug out. It's the name of a game from the 70s.
No, Subbuteo, the old flick to kick, dug it out of my storage unit, got World Cup goals You know, you can't do that on the TV. On your Mega Drive, you're not going to appreciate the game in the same way as if you were playing Subbuteo. I mean, I also dug out my Top Trumps cards, didn't I? My Top Trumps football cards. For any of you that know what Top Trumps are, you'll know what I'm talking about. For those who don't worry about it. But
it's like a card game, isn't it?
It's a card game. You know, I mean, I'm holding 3 in front of me now. Ray Kennedy, Andy Gray and Don Givens from 1978. British soccer stars. You don't really see that now. You do have gaming cards now, but then I think they're called Match Stacks. No, that's Pokemon. Just don't. Top Trumps, brilliant game. Brilliant. Because, you know, you learn about your favourite players, see dodgy photos of them with really bad hair. We'll probably put a few on our Facebook page at some point.
It's like tiny fragments of the internet put onto a piece of cardboard.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it's Wikipedia, but without all the information.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, you know, if you look at the games now, I think part of the beauty, in all seriousness, of these retro games is the fact that you are detached from reality. You know,
yes, well, I can say that about
as is normally my case. You are detached from reality. You're detached from the reality of real life football. You know, when you're playing these computer games, you know, do you want to see Neymar rolling around on the floor, or do you just want to play football and get on with it? You know?
All right. Well, that's Steve and his Top Trumps and his Subbuteo and his what was it? Sega, was it? Not Sega.
Sega Mega Drive.
The Mega Drive. We're going to get Steve to post some photographs of his Top Trump cards on Facebook for you all to have a little look at. Moving on, because you know, quite frankly, that's only reinforced my belief that kids have it much better these days. What have we got next?
Where are they now? Do you know where Trevor Aylott is?
Trevor Aylott, I'm guessing since you're asking the question, he's a cabbie?
Correctamundo. I've been dying to say that. Trevor Aylott is indeed a taxi driver, as is one of your old boys.
Alan Dickens.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep. John Bumstead.
Oh, I didn't know that John Bumstead.
John Bumstead is also a taxi driver, but the one that's slightly more left field is David Bentley.
Well, David Bentley, the only reason that we brought him up, apart from the fact, of course, he did play once for Arsenal and many times for Tottenham, he's famous for giving up football at a very young age. Because he gave up football at a very young age because he eventually found it just far too commercialised, far too sterile, and he believed that the magic had gone from the game. He could obviously afford to retire. What did he do once he retired? He became a restaurateur. For those who don't know, it's not restaurateur, bugs me, but never mind, a restaurateur. He opened a bar here, the Costa del Sol, called La Sala. They also have a version in Essex. He and several other footballers are now the owners of that bar, and very often they can be seen down here in Marbella, hanging out during the off-season. So David Bentley went from footballer to restaurateur because he could.
Because there's no stress involved in being a restaurateur, is there?
Well, not being an investor, there isn't. Basically, you pay your money and you go back to your mansion.
Yeah. Oh, well, I suppose you're either going to make money or lose money, end of.
Well, yeah, they're certainly making some money there. We'll give them another plug in case they offer us a free breakfast. La Sala in Porto Banús. And talking of people we should thank, very briefly, Stuart Hill, Exclusive Wines, stuarthilluk.com. You can get all the information about the exclusive wines, cigars, cheeses and organic teas that they provide to distributors and all the cultural events that they sponsor and support. And thank you to our bar, of course, our local bar here in Calahonda. And thank you to Taxi Point, information and up-to-date news about everything to do with that industry, and to My Taxi, which is a taxi app. So thanks to all those people. Before we wrap it up,
shall we talk about Spurs history?
Very, very briefly.
Right.
That is a summing up of Spurs history.
Spurs, founded in 1882. That's it. We're done. No. Spurs were founded indeed in 1882 on a piece of boggy marshland. They are the only team to win the FA Cup since the formation of the league who were in fact a non-league side. That's only because the Football League wouldn't have them, and they've regretted it ever since. The first club last century, notice Chris, last century, to do the League and Cup double. Arsenal have done it a couple more times since. In 1963, they were the first club to win a UEFA competition, the Cup Winners' Cup. In 72, they were the first club to win the UEFA Cup. In total, they've won 2, count them, because it's very easy to do, 2 titles, 8 FA Cups.
This is not a history of art.
No. I'm just reiterating Spurs'
having a pop, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I can. 8 FA Cups compared to Arsenal's 13, 4 League Cups, 3 European trophies, and 7 Charity Shields, which are completely meaningless.
Ooh, well, thank you very much. Any Spurs fans listening, ignore that. Spurs have got a future. Arsenal have got a history.
Yeah, and one bit of history which has always stuck with me since I was a boy. 1967 FA Cup final was the first all-London FA Cup final. Spurs won 2-1 against Chelsea.
Thank you so much for listening. This was another edition of Karle and Geoff Hitting the Bar. Football from monocles to man buns. Thank you to Steve Kenton, historian.
Thank you.
Thank you to Geoff Saunders, West Ham fan.
You're welcome, Chris.
I'm Chris Carl. Do join us next time for more Karle and Geoff Hitting the Bar.
You've been listening to Karle and Geoff Hitting the Bar. Join us again next week for more of their twisted football news, all of their weird football views. You can find them here every week on Karle and Geoff Hitting the Bar. We'll see you again shortly.